Hello, everybody. I'm Bob Leibholz, SVP of Business Development here at BairesDev. BairesDev is an enterprise-grade nearshore software development partner. We have about 5,000 employees, largely, but not entirely, based in Latin America. We have a significant Salesforce practice, and obviously AI is a huge part of it. That being said, we have an amazing set of panelists from industry, from several industries, that I'm really looking forward to introducing. A couple of comments before that. As everybody knows, AI is quickly becoming foundational, not just to business and science, but really to life. It's interesting how it's developed. We now think differently, we now operate differently, and certainly productivity expectations are dramatically increased with the advent and the acceptance of AI. It's becoming so important that it's, as I said before, foundational. Salesforce has, of course, embraced AI a long time ago, and they've really doubled down and maybe even tripled down on it in the past few years. And we're excited to see what's happening and what will be happening. And we'll be talking about some of creative uses of AI, how AI is changing things, and some opportunities for especially larger enterprise to further embrace it. Let me introduce our wonderful panelists, or even better yet, let them introduce themselves. Anu, would you like to start?
All right. Hi, Bob. Thank you for the intro. My name is Anu Varmani, and I'm a product leader, technology leader that has led the digital transformation for Fortune 100 companies, including the historic $70 billion acquisition of Fox by Disney, where I helped implement strategic initiatives for ad sales platforms. I have led Salesforce programs at Fox and post-acquisition at Disney, and worked on a Salesforce governance model that encompassed both Salesforce ecosystems. Currently, I'm at American Honda Motors, leading an enterprise data initiative for the global data platforms team, setting the precedent for how these projects should be conducted, not only from an implementation framework perspective, but also data best practices. My expertise is in embracing new technologies and driving end-to-end technology solutions, and I always prioritize business value.
Thank you so much. Jeanniey Walden. Jeanniey?
Hello, everybody. I'm excited to be here. My name is Jeanniey Walden, and I'm the founder of a media and marketing platform called Liftoff Enterprises. I've been a chief marketing officer and a business executive for my career, working with Salesforce implementations in a number of locations and places, including during my time at Ogilvy and also as the global chief marketing officer at Mercer. I'm very well versed in the Salesforce experience and application. In my early days, started out in email marketing, so have experience with all of the acquisition companies that Salesforce has put together to create such an incredible and powerful platform over the past few years. Today, I'm advising a number of companies, including Rakuten Rewards, in addition to running my TV show, which is nationally broadcast. It's called Lift Off with Jeanniey Walden. And on the show, we often have business executives on who are speaking about how they're leveraging technology, and today, AI-powered technology, to improve their bottom line business results. I'm very excited to talk about the sales and marketing aspect of the adoption of Salesforce, the effective usage of it, and how AI is just going to continue to enhance that.
Thank you so much. Vikas?
Hi, Bob. Excited to be here. Hello, everyone. Vikas Kumar. I'm based out of New Jersey. I'm currently the Chief Growth Officer for iOPEX, an intelligence as a service company which transforms the way enterprises exist, operate, and increase efficiencies across the board by leveraging AI, command agents, and a magnitude of AI-enabled services. That's what is my current role. Previously, 15 years in Europe, 15 years in US, multiple leadership roles in product companies, services companies, been head of multiple products and platforms in my past, very close to the Salesforce ecosystem. And today I would love to talk about multiple things that we will do, which will help your journey as a Salesforce client and maybe a Salesforce user going down the line. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Let me start with a question for Jeanniey. You've had such a tremendous experience and success in what we used to think of as digital marketing, but it's so much more than that now. It started with email and then goes to interactive content, and of course now AI is really the governor for so much of this. How do you see AI really refining and rethinking brands' emotional connections? How do you see even going beyond personalization? How do you build loyalty and trust at scale with AI?
That is a
Question.
that is a fully loaded question that could take the entire webinar. So, I think that there's a few things.
Sure.
One is the efficiency in the automation that AI is offering to any enterprise platform, including Salesforce, is phenomenal because it has a critically powerful key role when you're rolling out tools like Salesforce into enterprise organizations to just dynamically increase adoption, which has historically been one of the biggest challenges for Salesforce usage inside companies. You've got the data challenges on one side, which the rest of the esteemed panel will talk about, but then you've got the Salesforce, and they've got to adopt it, not just desktop version, but mobile when they're on the go. And oftentimes it requires so many clicks that AI and everything that's happening from an Agentforce perspective is making that so much easier that you get better data in, which ends up with better analytics, better offers, better personalization, and better data out. So there is absolutely an incredibly powerful, good part of what's happening with AI. Now, on the other side, the pendulum swings so tremendously to automation in a dynamic environment that the world is moving towards agentic conversations. So, what you see today with AI are recommended responses in our inboxes, and that seems great and cool, and it's a time saver. But soon we'll see the agents automatically responding into the email boxes, which means everything we're doing from a Salesforce perspective is going to become much more strategically harder because an agent is now going to speak to somebody else's agent. So the criticality around personalization and analysis to get to the one-to-one messaging that will allow two agents to interact on behalf of their inbox owners is going to become really important to break through the clutter. We've got this great opportunity to architect it. And I think Dreamforce is going to be such a powerful event next week, set of conversations to allow everyone to start to see how to start building those architectures to create success in the future. And also understand how to then leverage other things that we historically put in the above the funnel category to break through the clutter with brand awareness. I think you're going to see a resurgence in in-person events as a way to close deals. I think you're going to see a resurgence in TV. And, we already see it in podcasts as ways to get in front of and out of the agentic to agentic experience. It's going to be a lot of fun.
For what it's worth, I agree with you completely. At the end of the day, AI makes things so much more efficient, drives a lot of personalization, but there's a difference between personalization and the personality and the human connection, and we can never lose track of that.
So,
Something that Jenny said just triggered something in my mind, and that is fundamentally everything she is describing is inherently the underlying quality of data, amount and quality of the data is so critically important, and it becomes more important when you're getting highly customized and then when you have these agentic types of conversations among agents that don't even include humans. You've done a tremendous amount of large-scale migrations and transformations in several industries, media and entertainment, you've already told us about, and of course, certainly at Honda. What do you see of the interplay and the focus on data as a predecessor event to rolling out, complex AI initiatives?
Well, I think, as we've all heard in the news, that there has been like a high failure rate for AI projects in general. And I'm not saying it's the only reason, that data is the only reason for that failure. There could be a multitude of them, but I do think that a lot of those failures are attributed to poor data quality. It could be quantity of data. It could be the quality of data. So making sure, I still think there's going to be some fundamental level of needing to have like good data governance, integration pipelines, master data management. I still think these things are still going to be important. However, I will say with the recent acquisition of the Salesforce Informatica partnership, I definitely think is going to serve them well because they are like an industry leader and, data governance overall. And I think it'll improve like the data trust and governance, maybe the overall integration capabilities. So I definitely think they're moving in the right direction towards like data-centric AI. So that's where I would
Right.
track
I love what you say, Anu, right? And just to add to it, right? Well, I remember last time when we were talking, right? And we have been talking so much. We had data in, which is garbage in, garbage out.
Yes. Yep.
So that is very important today. People try to focus on AI, and there is lots of things that AI can do, right? But if you give it the wrong data and if you don't train the models properly, it will learn a long feedback mechanism, right? And then you will have disaster because the amount of predictions or hallucinations that will arise will be really impacting the way people interact with your data or your applications or your AI or your models, right? So having that is very important from data perspective. The other thing which I would say is that one thing Salesforce has got now is the data cloud. And the integration of the data cloud across the ecosystem is really nice, right? So Einstein and other modules which used to work beautifully before now will work exceptionally beautifully because the data cloud ecosystem helps it all to bind together. Now, as Anu mentioned, you have Informatica in the mix, you have MuleSoft in the mix. So integration has become a seamless data platform for everything, right? Informatica in itself was a huge company, right? Been in existence for 20 years, right? Now it has got multiple facets, 6 different facets of data. That Salesforce combined together with Informatica gives a cutting edge which no other platform today provides. So very excited on that.
And I love that you said that because that's such a powerful feature that enables the activation of Salesforce into the Salesforces and into the marketing world in a much faster and more effective way. I mean, think of how many years of our collective lives, and for everybody that's listening on this call too, that have spent waiting for the data to get to the right spot where you can actually do the implementation and the launch. And now it gives you so much more control over it. I think it's really important not to be missed.
Exactly. And it's like couple of my clients with whom I am working, right? They have data legacy from like 30 years, 40 years, large enterprise clients who have grown through acquisitions, mergers, right? They will have like 20 different places from which the data comes, right? 40, 50, sometimes hundreds of source systems from which the data is coming.
There's nothing quite as challenging as a bank that's done several mergers and has 9 master files.
Exactly, right? And that used to be a little bit of a problem earlier because in Salesforce, if we wanted to have the deduplication of data, right? 9 master files, as you said, Bob, right? Deduplicating it, finding the survivorship rules, the match and merge logic, the business rules engine, which will govern what the golden source of record or the golden truth would look like, was tough. But Informatica acquisition, Informatica has the Informatica master data management, Informatica has a power center. It brings the data, cleanses the data. There's a IDQ, which is Informatica Data Quality. It all works in tandem now, right? It's all synchronized so well that the client does not have to think. So multiple of the places where I have a Salesforce installation and the clients have got old legacy data warehouses, Bill Inman, Raf Kimball models, right, which used to exist earlier, they're trying to move to Snowflake, Databricks, right? But maybe they don't need to move to Snowflake or Databricks because Salesforce can give them that edge because of the Informatica and MuleSoft integration together. And Einstein is there for all analytics that you want to play with, right? So very exciting journey of the data. AI is the forefront, but behind the pillar, the foundation is data. So very important to focus on that as well.
One quick follow-up question, because you've had tremendous success along your career, taking concepts, turning them to POCs, rolling them out, and then ultimately delivering enterprise scale outcomes and enterprise scaled solutions. Are there any special, any tips, best practices that you want to share? That's a lot of the times when people fail, as Anu mentioned, the failures are rarely at the POC level, because to even register as a failure, you need to get past that. Obviously, you've figured some things out that help you get to success a lot more regularly than others. What's the secret sauce there that you can bottle up into a 5-minute conversation?
I will try to do that. But again, as Jenny was mentioning, some of the topics are such which can take the entire webinar.
So
So
I understand that. That's fair.
this is a beautiful point, right? So I think you are right. When you do a proof of concept, a POC is being done. It's in a controlled environment. POC is never something which is being done with the real.
And if it fails, you didn't prove it. You move on.
Right, it is. Even if you make a POC successful, Bob, in a controlled environment, that's fine, right? But the real proof of the pudding comes when you take that POC and try to improvise across multiple things. So, say for example, you want to have a realistic scenario where you are trying to do some marketing cloud data, right? And you are trying to move some stuff for marketing, right? Now, if you try to do a POC and there were 30 source systems from which the data was actually coming, what would you do? You can't take source systems all 30 and do the POC. You'll take one source system and you'll say, okay, I'll take data from here. I'll bring it in the marketing cloud and do my cleansing and blah, 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 and then send it out for marketing purposes, right? That's a POC for one source system, works beautifully. But the moment you try to take it to production, and now you're trying to integrate 30 source systems in the real world, you'll have so many problems because the latency of the data, the frequency of the data, the periodicity of the data, the timestamp of the data, whether the data is delta or you're getting a full load, creates such an imbalance. So a POC will fail. The POC which was successful in production will fail because you'll not be able to give a correct outcome. Now, what we try to do in my experience that I have tried to do is that create an MVP, right? An MVP is not new. A most viable product, right? Or a minimum viable product.
Minimum, yeah.
Whichever way you want. Some people call it most viable product because you might have 3 or 4 MVPs, minimum viable products, and you will choose one of them, right? So what is the most beneficial out of the 5 MVPs or minimum viable products that you can go for? Now, if you're trying to do an MVP, my suggestion or my learning is try to do 3 or 4 different distinct areas. So POC scope should be widened rather than doing a 1-week POC or a 2-week POC just to prove that it works. Rather than that, take 1.5 months, 2 months, invest that time into that POC across multiple MVPs, then see what is out of those minimum viable products, what becomes the most viable, which can give you a real, credibility or assurance to the business. Because at the end, IT will do stuff, but business is the stakeholder, right? If business is happy with your most viable product based on multiple minimum viable products, that changes the ecosystem because now you have got a foundation of MVPs. That is where we call intelligence as a service ecosystem, which comes into play. So it's a really adaptive way in which your foundation keeps moving, keeps changing, keeps getting automated. You make sure that there are no model drifts. And this I'm talking about AI perspective now. You make sure that there are no model drifts. And when one MVP leads to a most viable product, or 5 MVPs leads to a most viable product, and that most viable product is accepted by the business, you create same replicas across different lines of business. So you might have done it for one set area, say for example, HR or finance. Do it for marketing. Do it for, say for example, sales. Do it for operations. When you have all of them, there's a 6 months period, but then your results will be outstanding because they will be successful. Rather than just doing one POC for 2 weeks in one silo, try to do POCs and MVPs across. So that's my learning.
Jeannie, do you agree with him? And the reason I'm asking you is because, at least in my experience, AI and specifically in the area of digital marketing, it's a very iterative process. It's just constantly iterating. So rather than you get the MVP, you get it running, you feel great, you move on. In my experience, it never ends. How do you view these things?
It's a really interesting question because I think AI kind of changes the rules, as I said earlier, and it's changing the way from a marketing and a sales perspective that we're identifying success. So in the past, an MVP might do exactly what we talked about, which is prove that the product is going to work, the data is going to flow, and then the people leveraging that product should be trained on the product, adopt it, and they continue through their path. But now with AI, we've got this unique wrinkle that changes the game pretty dramatically, and it starts to eliminate the battle between marketing and sales on the quality of a lead and who's an effective salesperson versus the lead came in from marketing and it sat in Salesforce for 3 days from a campaign that was done before anyone got back to it, because AI enables us to use the analytics and the insights in a super powerful way. And one of those ways, AI is not going to replace your Salesforce, especially in this situation, but it is going to expose who on your Salesforce is not using the data intelligently. And that's not something that we've had the luxury to have before. There's been the battle of this marketing campaign or this local field event drove all these leads into the system, but by the time the rep got to them, they were too old or they weren't the highest quality, and everybody argues over it. But in most enterprises, the biggest barrier to AI success isn't the technology. It is exactly what we talked about, the trust in the clean data. And while AI is not going to win deals for us, it's going to make sure that we are never missing out on the ones that should have been the salespersons and that they should be acting on. So that gives us a whole new perspective to figure out how to master AI and continue to iterate with it to make it smarter and smarter and get to the level of personalization that it will take and the timing of the marketing campaigns to build the bridges between those two areas that so frequently, have that battle back and forth.
A really interesting comment. It just occurred to me that it's going to fundamentally change how sales leaders and sales managers think about their role and govern the work of the line level reps. An interesting conversation, probably for a different time and maybe even a different webinar.
I just wanted to add to what Jeanniey was saying. I love what I think one of the intelligence as a service is a great concept, but I think the most important thing from a business perspective is that we're going to close the gap, hopefully, between insight and action, right? There's too much of a gap that's happening. Okay, you have all these great, static dashboards, but now what, right? So like, I would like to know, I'm just thinking a simple use case out loud, like, okay, why did this sale go down? Or why are my sales down 5% in this area, right? For whatever reason. And how can we garner information, not just within the ecosystem that we have access to, but really leverage AIs, whether it's through like soft mirroring of like the tariffs are impacting our sales for this reason, or this large invoice wasn't paid on time. Like, I would like to get those types of, I'm hoping that's the sort of direction we're moving in, is that those quick insights, rather than, analysts going through 17 different dashboards or navigating through 15 different screens to get the same information. I think that's going to be what's powerful, is just like closing that gap, getting those quick insights, and then moving forward and taking action. So
yes,
really interesting. And one of the interesting things that I don't know if it has been solved yet is oftentimes to get those insights, you need to compare your own internal data with data in the universe, external data for benchmarking and other things. And I think that's an area where some companies have been working on that piece of it. Other companies, I think, have sort of let that fallow. And I think that'll be another turn of innovation in the coming year or two. Just any comment on that? Yeah.
Well,
sorry.
I was just going to say, what you're saying sparks, just so many great ideas. And the fact, not looking externally at competitive data, but that's super important. Even just looking internally at the sales funnel, using AI and all of the data connections that you build is not going to solve the problem on why our sales down, but it is going to show you at exactly what part in the funnel your customers stop listening. And what an amazing, that is like the biggest gift that AI could give any marketing or sales leader, to understand exactly where they need more content, exactly where they need to have a different approach, exactly where a sales team or a salesperson isn't making the right, conversations happen where they need to be. And to be able to get there without, all of, as you both said, like the intuitive moments of, well, it's raining outside, but it's sunny in Florida, so I think that's why this event didn't happen. And John's, been on vacation. It just makes it very clear to you, and it takes out all the guesswork.
Yeah, I think we're all looking forward to less guesswork in the future. I agree with you 110%. Vikas, you were going to say something earlier, and I think I interrupted you.
Oh, no. I was just resonating with what Anu was saying. So yes, clear. Intelligence as a service leading to analytics and actions and insights.
Moving on, another sort of broad topic that I think all of you will have thoughts around is ROI. ROI is so critical to justification of a project, to all sort of downstream decisions that are made around everything from personnel to investments to whatnot. it's not always the easiest thing to really figure out ROI. Because one typically figures out ROI differently when you're trying to justify a case for a spend to a board. And then when you're trying to justify some hiring or non-hiring decisions on the personnel side. And of course, there's before something is implemented versus afterwards. Love to hear some war stories about that and also some best practices. Anu, why don't you start with that? Because I'm sure that you've had to do this kind of work hundreds of times in the transformation and mergers and acquisition activities you've been engaged in.
Yes, there's been like massive project failures, and I don't want to name companies. I'm just going to say generally where, you're trying to, enhance these legacy systems. I've just seen so many of those situations where we've tried to leverage new technologies or we've tried to replace legacy systems and just massive failures on that front over the years. But I would also say, like, starting at the top, like, we should really be thinking about high ROI use cases, not just like willy-nilly, but like what can bring in real impact, where are like the big gaps of knowledge, and where can we draw in the most
Is it
value.
more gaps of knowledge or more easily automatable?
Yeah, that too. I think there's two aspects to that. I think depending on what part of the organization you're in, maybe automation's more important in certain aspects, like maybe business, maybe like HR functions or finance functions, but maybe it's different. The use cases are different in sales and marketing, right? So I think automation might be more important in some, and in others, it'll be more about like leveraging insights, right? So
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
I think I totally agree with what Anu is saying. In my opinion, if it comes towards ROI, return on investment, right? There are two ways of it. You can look at the tangible benefits, which is a quantitative number which you can derive and put on top, right? Another is the qualitative aspect, right? Which you like customer satisfaction, next best action, or say, for example, NPS scoring, right? Those are other things which are not directly quantifiable, but if you have a better customer experience, that matters, right? So both ROIs are important. Now, for me to get the easiest way of an ROI is to put your AI or agentic AI or orchestration layer in the path which is most critical. Now, we all know people, process, technology. So there are three areas where you can hit, right? Overall. Technology landscape, you can enhance, you can change, you can figure out what are the places which you can replace with AI. There are multiple systems today doing the same stuff, right? So legacy modernization, or say, for example, application portfolio optimization, that's one area where you can get a lot of ROI. Lots of things could be replaced today or merged together with a single platform, and you can do away with multiple platforms. So that's a technology level ROI. The second one is people level ROI, right? And people level ROI and process level ROI connected to each other, because the process defines how many people are needed for something to be done. Now, take the same example of Salesforce, Mr. Benioff. He had 9,000 service agents, right, on the process side of things, right? And that's all about making sure that all the customers, like thousands of customers across the globe, are calling in, they have answers, L1, L2, L3 support is going on, and we have 9,000 people supporting that, right? But if you improve the process, if you bring agentic AI, Agentforce on top of the model, if you figure out what are the processes, going back to what Anu was saying, right? Going back to figuring out what are the processes which are mundane, which can be automated by using, say, for example, a robotics process automation tool, RPA, UiPath automation anywhere, Blue Prism, Power Automate. Lots of tools are out there, right? But there are lots of features within Salesforce which can automate stuff for you, right? So that's a basic automation. But then there is an Agentforce automation on top, which can figure out, is this call getting routed in the right way? If there's a standard operating procedures of 30 line items, do I have to follow all those 30 line items, or can I do it in only 8 steps, right? So that's a process improvement. That process improvement will immediately reflect back on the people part of it. So technology we have done, process if you optimize, you get gains on people. And all of these three combined will give you the real ROI, which is a quantitative ROI, right? So just as the same example, Agentforce deployed, came back almost 1.5 years, really came into picture 6 months back. In 4 months' time, Mr. Benioff has been taken off 9,000 people and brought it down by 60% or 50% at least. And he has got 4,000, 5,000 people doing the stuff which was being done by 9,000 people. That's an immediate ROI. And I'm not saying in terms of making people redundant because those people can be utilized for doing something else.
Right. They could do higher level things. I agree with you.
Level things, right? So it's a ROI paradigm shift which we are seeing, because it's not only ROI on quantities but also ROI on qualitative aspect, where people feel that their queries or their resolution time or minimum time to resolution MTTR has reduced significantly, right? And with the advent of AI and the way agentic AI and command agents are getting embedded everywhere, this will go and get further and further improved.
Yeah, and this concept of whole business ROI, I think is something that we're going to see continue to emerge. And I know, from my backstories of implementing initiatives, especially when you're implementing Salesforce inside a company, it is a big product. It is a big process. It takes months, if not years. It takes millions of dollars, and you're looking from a sales and marketing perspective at an ROI that historically was, how much more revenue am I going to see? How fast am I going to see it? Are you going to reduce pipelines by 20% or 50%? Are you going to increase the average order value by clients? But a real battle tested story was, I was doing a big implementation one time, and the CEO said to me, how am I going to know it's a success? And I started giving him the numbers that we're all trained to do. And he said, no, I want to know how every leader in the company is going to feel that this was a success. How are their teams going to feel? That's how we're going to know if it was a success. So out of all of this, I'm sitting down with everybody, and I sit down with our chief legal counsel, and I said, we do this initiative. What's success going to feel like to you? And he stopped for a minute. You never think that a sales and marketing person gets this from legal, but he said, I think it's going to be transformational for my business. If this works, the level of trust in the industry for our business will go up. When there's a higher level of trust, there is a lower level of red lines in contract negotiations. That reduces my outside counsel costs. It reduced the number of hours that the internal team has to focus on these red lines, and it enables us to close deals faster. And when we went back and did the math, there were tens of millions of dollars of hidden ROI, company-based ROI, that no one would have identified if we wouldn't have thought of it in this unique perspective. So, because I love the way that you've set it up, it's very actionable, and it is the way that, in the agentic-driven world, we need to consider what ROI looks like. Because yes, AI can flip through your funnel and turn a 2-week dashboard into a 5-minute dashboard and pinpoint and replace the guesswork and show you the math. But most importantly, it's going to drive full business profit change. And that's something, again, that as companies, we haven't historically done. We've kept in our silos, and it is time to break those silos and see the full impact.
And I'm very impressed. That's an extremely interesting comment. I rarely think about ROI in such broad terms, so it's eye-opening. So thank you. Because you had a long and successful career in consulting. When you were making the case for transformation type of work, would you typically go for this very broad-based view of ROI when frankly pitching a project, or was it more tactically oriented?
It was a mixture of both, right? There are some people who would look at just numbers. So like Jeanniey was mentioning, right? There are some people who would just say, okay, fine, I'm spending X amount of dollars. What's my return? What's my break-even point? What's my turnaround time? All of that, right? So that's typically 90% of the mindset. And I'll be frank, 90% of the people who are in procurement or in finance, or the person who is signing your bill.
I invest now, I get 4X later.
Yes. And 4X later, and when, right? What's the break-even point? 18 months, 8 months, 6 months, 12 months, when I do get my money back. And then you have to show the hockey stick growth, saying, okay, fine, the break-even point is here, but then after that, I'm going to give you millions every year.
There's this old marketing joke. As long as the slide is always going up and to the right, you're fine.
Exactly, right? So then you show that hockey stick growth, and you extrapolate, saying over a period of 5 years, based on this, you are going to get this much return. Of course, you'll not factor in n number of parameters which can make that all dicey, and then the curve drops, right? But that's how most of the projects are sold, right? That's the ROI game that you play. But then there are other areas of which tactically you would also talk about, right? Say, for example, when I was in Europe, in UK, right? And the financial crisis had happened 2008 timeframes, right? Lots of things happen, right? The biggest impact which I saw was multiple banks had to be bailed out. And at that point of time, there were 7 different banks which had to be brought together under one umbrella of the Lloyds Banking Group, which was now being owned by the UK, or partly owned by the UK government, the British government, right? So you had Lloyds, TSB, Halifax, Bank of Scotland, Teachers Insurance, Scottish Widows, and one more. Seven different banks. And all of them had to be merged together. And at that time, I was an enterprise architect, also responsible for P&L and business. Now, there is no ROI for that, right? The banks have collapsed. What quantitative value will you give to it? The quantitative value is you salvage the bank and you still make it run, and you'll see.
Well, you can also argue that there was infinite ROI for that because there was no other alternative.
Exactly. And that's the argument, right? It's not quantitative, it's infinite, right? After that, once that whole successful merger was done, and it was a very huge program costing a huge amount of money, somewhere in billions, right? But then it went successful, it happened, and then the ROI over the next 4 years was determined. It was good, it worked well, it was a break even. But the inherent benefit out of that, which came, was that after the financial crisis, the compliance regulations across the globe, right, SOX and other compliances, there was lots of compliances which were put in. And if while architecting that system, we would not have thought about the various kinds of compliances or solvencies or SOX compliance laws which will come, then your system or your product or whatever you've created would not have been viable in the compliance world. So you have to anticipate what might come down the line. 15 years back, nobody thought of CCP or GDPR. Now, anything that you do, you have to think about CCP and GDPR, right? And that's the thought process that you have to keep, which is not an ROI directly quantifiable, but you are compliant, you are SOX compliant, you are solvency compliant, you are.
Yeah, I see the regulatory piece is slightly different. You can certainly measure it in terms of ROI because the pain and suffering that will occur should you not overlook that,
or the penalty that come, the penalties, the fines that will be.
Yes, those things and the rework.
Yes. But yes, but what happens is that there are ROIs of certain things which are, again, not quantifiable immediately, right? So say, for example, a tactical equation would be, you have a heritage platform, it's all legacy. But if you don't become compliant, or say, forget the word compliance here now, if you don't modernize it, your competitors will beat you to your game. And that ROI is not ROI quantifiable by saying your sales will increase or your top line will grow, or your bottom line will grow. You'll be out of competition if you don't modernize and do stuff. Say, for example, what happened with Blockbuster, or what happened with, say, for example, Nokia or Motorola. Right?
There are many.
You would have thought about it.
Yes,
the vision.
If you drive down the 101 in Silicon Valley and you look at the gutter, you will see the carcasses of many companies that didn't develop.
Thousands, right?
Right.
Two.
I don't want to sit here and name them, but we can all sort of take an amusement ride in our own.
Exactly. So out of 100 companies, the stats are very scary, right? Out of 100 companies created or startups which are created every year, after 2 years, only 2 of them generally survive. Only 2. So that's a very scary one. And out of 1,000 companies in the 5 years, only 1 becomes unicorn, right? So that's another big sample, right? So if everybody starts thinking about those ROIs, which are not quantifiable immediately, but has to do with competition and your presence in the market, your captivity of the market, those also help a lot.
Anu, some of the work that you've done, certainly with the M&A and integration projects that you've had to do after M&A, have been probably less around ROI and more around sort of corporate governance and all of that. How do you think about those differently, or do you not really think about them differently?
In terms of like ROI or...
Yeah, justification for the project, and then we have to sort of tie that back into AI ultimately.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think some of those are like necessities. They're not really looking at ROI per se. It's just making sure that, like in the particular case of Fox and Disney, like Fox still went on to spin off their own organization, and Disney, they had to kind of divvy up thousands of systems to figure out which ones are they retiring, which ones are they keeping, which ones will they spin off into something else, but like also maintaining the data integrity and privacy between the two organizations. So I don't think there was like an ROI component. It was more of like a privacy and we have to follow these rules and regulations. But if I talk about like, I was going to add one more point regarding like metrics that executives look at in terms of, the success of an application or a tool or what have you. They also look at adoption rates. And one of the challenges with Salesforce in general, I would see is just like tons of unused licenses or like just not like you'll build this great system and it works beautifully and it's perfectly built to spec, but then you just don't see the same adoption of you don't see the adoption numbers that you would like to say to be qualified.
Yeah, I really am glad you brought that up because I think all the work that you and the folks on this webinar are either doing or contemplating, at the end of the day, adoption is kind of as key as anything else.
Yeah,
But
sometimes
here's
what happens. Sorry, go ahead.
Well,
I did.
the only thing I was going to ask, it's more of like a quandary of like, okay, we care a lot about adoption right now in terms of like this tool or application that we spent millions of dollars, is it actually being utilized as a part of like the ROI metrics? But my question is like, once we start to integrate agentic AI into our workflows, will it even matter? Because it's like teaching a college intern, like, okay, in the beginning, this agent may not operate as we would like to see, but you're training that model and over time it'll become this like superstar, right? So sort of superstar performer, and maybe it won't be.
But it'll be superstar performer within a very, very limited box.
Sure. But I'm just, again, this is an open quandary. You could just, I would love to hear what Jeannie and Vikas think about it, but I was just like, how will it be relevant? I don't know. So, or a rhetorical question.
It is in Anu. And see, what happens is that there are some things which are not only adoption based, but some things which are competition based. Again, in example of Salesforce, right? I didn't think that Salesforce would have wanted to go into an ITSM space, a service management space, very aggressively till 2 years back. But then when ServiceNow came, and both Salesforce are big partners of mine, so it's fine. And this is a recorded call. But when
the competition is just 10 miles down the road for that.
10 miles down the road, right? So when ServiceNow decided that they wanted to go into the CRM space, which was like 1.5 years back, it was like, okay, fine. You want to go into the CRM space? Okay, that's my sweet spot, Salesforce thinks, right? Then Salesforce said, okay, your sweet space is service management, right? Your ServiceNow. I'll go into the ITSM space. And that is something which is not only adoption, but it's competition, tit for tat, overlapping of domains and ideas and territories, and then making sure you drive your marketing dollars and everything else to make people adopt it, right? Whichever way you want, right? A product or a company does not fail because the idea is not good or the product is not good. It fails because it does not have the right marketing strategy and the right marketing dollars behind it. There are many good things which failed because they were not able to sustain and they were not able to compete against the big biggies, right? Now, if in this example, and this is going to get launched in Dreamforce next week, and in one of the keynote speakers, I would be speaking about this. So this is all about ITSM launch, which Benioff is trying to do on 14th. A huge show about it, right? But the challenge is, it's a new foil for Salesforce, right? They haven't done service management in the past. They have a service cloud and they have Slack integration as well. But then proper ITSM migration means, say, for example, there are multiple clients which want to now move out to the Salesforce ecosystem of ITSM. And they're managed. I'm not only going to ServiceNow. There's Zoho, Zoomdesk, ZoomInfo. There are BMC Helix. There are other platforms as well, which all have ServiceNow capabilities inside, or say services ITSM capabilities inside. The accelerator that we have been developing could take any ITSM from any source and put it into Salesforce ecosystem. So that's the kind of dollars which Salesforce want to invest to make sure that the adoption going back to Anu's point, right? That the adoption is increased for a service management tool which they're launching. It's totally new for them. Their whole ecosystem is based across so many good clouds, and the complete now Agentforce coming on top. This will be a success. It will be a huge success because they have the.
So you had to pick, because if you had to pick 3 things that you're excited about for Salesforce, the upcoming Salesforce's Dreamforce event, what are the 3 technological innovations that you think are going to be most life-changing for technologists and business people in the next few weeks?
That's a loaded question. If I have to only pick three, right? I have
yes. I'm going to ask everybody max 3.
Sure. So
It's called a forced choice.
sure. So predominantly, I think my booth is 807, which is inside the Agentforce shop of the Dreamforce floor. Now, I think I have 10 plus accelerators which I want to showcase, which will change lots of things. But if I had to pick up 3, I would say the biggest one, in my opinion, right now is vibe coding. Vibe coding is something which is like you can talk and the narrative, and it would convert it into a proper code, and the code should run, hopefully. So that's vibe coding. That's going to transform the way people work, because you don't need developers or coders to work for you now. A business analyst or a functional person sitting in somewhere in finance or business can do the vibe coding, can speak, and the code will be created. And then it requires maybe 20% proliferation or little massaging, right? So that's vibe coding, which is going to change the way things work today. Second one, Agentforce is already very, very strong. The rollout in various industry clouds aligned to Agentforce with pre-built accelerators, which can help you in any of the, say, for example, CPQ process or code to cash to, means like credit risk agencies, right? All of that will be very differentiating as well. So that Agentforce ecosystem across industry domains. And the third one is the ITSM launch, because Salesforce getting into the ITSM world, that's humongous. And integration with Slack, the current market adoption of Salesforce Slack and Salesforce product is huge, much bigger market cap, right? If you introduce Slack and ITSM integration, it will be humongous change, because currently a service management is means requiring to aid tickets, getting a resolution, someone answering your questions, resolving it, query coming back, closing the ticket. Everything will change.
Personally, I very much agree with you. I think there are other reasons too. If you get those two, let's think of them as modules. They're much more than modules. We know that. But let's call them modules. If you get them in sync, you can have a much, much better view of, 360 view of your customer, their relationship, all that stuff. That's so fundamental. Going back to sort of the comments that Jeannie made early on in this discussion. Jeannie, what are your top 3 things you're looking forward to at Dreamforce in terms of product announcements or initiatives?
Yeah, well, I think Vikas has covered the technology landscape very efficiently. So I will stick to, just looking at how Dreamforce is going to be addressing the agentic world and personalization and data in the cloud. I have heard rumors that there could be something around that takes the bots that traditionally join us in webinars and do the recording and the contextual note taking and turning it into voice and emotionally based agents that will help to not only give the recommendations that we just talked about with data, but then to also pick up the tone and the conversational elements. And I think anything that you can do to better help prepare the sales and marketing teams for the conversation then just moves everybody light years forward. I'm super excited about the way that Salesforce is packaging their agentic paradigm, and not just the fact that they're agents that are acting, but this like the whole agentic process. How's it going to pull together to create a continuous conversation that now the teams that are leveraging Salesforce find tremendous value in, because that is going to push to what the third piece is, which is the new role of the salesperson in a Salesforce Dreamforce capacity, where the basic agentic AI is creating the conversation, and the sales teams, to Anu's point, are now adopting Salesforce, not because it's hype, but because there's value there, and they can learn how to leverage insights in ways that they've never had to before and really lean in. So I think that's fantastic.
Thanks. Anu, what about yourself? What are the things?
I think Vikas covered the technology part, but there was 2 things I wanted to add. One is I'm excited about lowering the barrier of entry for non-technical people to have a technology impact, through vibe coding or Salesforce coding, whatever they're going to be calling it. I think that's really exciting. Just having that where it's just not developer and product management, but now that I feel like it's a more even playing field. So I'm excited for that. And the second is, I know there's like a really big push for like gathering like tribal knowledge and unstructured data from like Slack or other like communication channels, or even like meeting notes, and trying to use those as a foundation for natural language, or like conversationally how we might interact with these like agentic entities. So I'm like really curious to see like how we can leverage that, not just like your traditional data, like sales data, etc., but like leveraging that unstructured data. I'm really curious to see how we can leverage that as well. So I definitely, those are sort of the themes I'm hearing, like as I'm moving through my industry and talking to other people in the industry.
Yeah, you brought up some really good points, almost a whole webinar's worth of points. But
I know, I was like, let me.
The whole notion of getting the business unit, the business leaders closer to the execution, rather than this sort of, I don't want to use
siloed. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, siloed or stage, because those are such loaded words. You can bring a psychologist to think about that. But the closer the business leaders can be to the actual execution, the fewer iterations and the better the product will be every time.
Correct.
Yes.
So a stronger partnership between business and the delivery. I think I can see that happening and evolving over time.
Sure. Any of I guess I'm sure we're gonna have some Q&A, but any other parting thoughts that you guys wanted to share about either things that are on your roadmap, things you're thinking about, or things that you're excited about for the coming year with the use of AI specifically within Salesforce, or on top of Salesforce is probably a better way of putting it. It's an open pressing. Jump in.
I think at the beginning of the year, we're going to see some hesitancy towards adoption and a lot of focus on education, translation, and impact. And I think when we look back 6 months into the year, that's going to be old hat, because everyone will have picked it up and created new use cases for leveraging, all of the aspects of Agentforce, of Einstein, and all of these pieces in different ways that we haven't even considered yet. Because talks about vibe coding, and I think that's so cool. And to some extent, it's somewhat limited because you can get so far, and then you have to ask somebody that really knows what they're doing to help you figure it out. So I'm excited about the silo breaking that's going to come together, because I watched this video a year ago about how to build an AI powered organization from scratch, and there are no silos. There is not a product team, a marketing team, a sales team. There is a focus on the end product, and all of the teams leverage the agentic elements to come together. So I think that's what we're going to see happen before our eyes throughout the course of 2020.
What you just described could also be equally described with any startup that has 3 people, because everybody wears every hat at that point.
Yeah, or it could be Skynet, one of the two.
Fair enough. We have a few questions from the audience, and they're actually really excellent questions, because I'm going to throw one out specifically to you, given your strong technical background. How does the AI powered solution integrate with a heavily customized Salesforce environment? We all know that Salesforce is usually customized, and the question is how much, and how far from the Virgin platform do people get? But I imagine that adds complexity when you add agentic AI on top.
It will, right? And again, it's a very loaded question, right? It's a 1 or 2 hour discussion, but I'll try to keep it brief, right? So, of course, Salesforce are heavily customized instances most of the places. Now, if you use something which is an Agentforce out of the box agent which has already been created for you, and if you try to run it on a customized version, there will be hiccups. Now, you need to figure out, first of all, do you have proper documentation for what was customized for you? If you have proper documentation for what was customized to you, we can write an AI code which can look at that documentation and figure out what has changed in your source and targets, and then accordingly customize the Agentforce which is going to run on top of it. So that can be automated. If you have proper documentation, it can be read, it can be deciphered. But if you don't have proper documentation, then we'll have to do reverse engineering to figure out what customization was done, and then accordingly change the code. So the answer is, the heavier the customization, the harder it will be to use a already pre-built out of the box Agentforce or agentic AI module on top. However, if you're trying to build something from scratch, customization does not matter. Because if you're trying to build from scratch,
provided it's well documented.
Even if it is not documented, you can figure it out, because what AI does is that you can have reinforced learning. So you'll try to ping it and you'll figure it out whether it's working or not. And it will keep on learning on its own self, saying, okay, this did not work. Let me try this. Let me try this. Let me try this. Right. And you can keep on reiterating, and a human does not have to do it. The code does it for you. So what happens is that as long as you've got proper RAG, and if you've got proper vector databases, and if you've got proper guardrails around all of that, you can get away with customization to some extent from a native AI development, right? But if it is heavy customization, you are right, Bob, it will be tough. So it will be case-to-case basis, looking at how customization is, and then you might have to reverse engineer as well. That's a very short answer, but there are various techniques of getting around.
Sure, absolutely. And we realize this is not typically a 3-second answer. One other question I thought it's actually a corollary to something we talked about, which is, and I'll throw it out to you, Jeannie, and you, Anu, because you had specifically talked about this earlier. How to coach stakeholders in managing AI-powered solutions. It's somewhat around adoption, but it's a little bit different. So, Jeannie, let's start with you.
The question is such a fun one to answer, because this is where you really get to lean into defining what success looks like with AI. And like with any other product, with any other initiative, you start with the KPIs that are going to matter to the business. So you've got stakeholders that now have to create levels of adoption. And somebody said to me once that nobody pays attention to anything you say unless it's solving their most important problem. So what I love to do in situations like this is to just start with asking them, what do you think the biggest challenge is going to be? And start with that and define a coaching plan around that, and then worry about the rest of it. And it will come to, it will take place. Anu, I'm sure you have some thoughts too and experience.
Yeah.
I think there's a bit of a shiny object syndrome going on with AI in general. So I think, especially sometimes people at the top, they're not familiar and they just are being told, like, do something with AI, right? But I think there needs to be some more thought into, like, what exactly are those use cases? How can you truly leverage it? And driving it, exactly what you said, Jeannie, like to your OKRs and KPIs, what have you, like, what is the objective? What are you trying to achieve? So I think it's really honing in on what it is that they're trying to achieve, having the data to back it up. Do you have the data in a, like, is it ready to be trained, or do you have the resources? Do you have the right people in place? So I think there's that component of it as well. So, I mean, those are some of the themes I've been seeing in general. And also, like, the paradigm shift between product and like a model, like how you train a model versus how you manage a product. I think there's also that sort of paradigm shift that needs to happen as well. So
yeah, I think if I had to coach someone, I would, stakeholders, right, and especially business stakeholders, my first thing would be expectation setting. The day one you go and start using an AI-powered solution, it will not give you accurate results. It will give you some. But once you start reinforcing and the reinforced learning starts happening, the knowledge directly starts getting created. It learns in 2 months' time, 3 months' time, you will see better results, right? So that's expectation setting for a business stakeholder would be my first coaching. And then everything else, Bob is your uncle, we can go from there. See, Bob is your uncle. Oh, it resonates.
I want to thank each of you for sharing your expertise, your passion, and your experience. It's been terrific. I've learned a lot. Hopefully the folks who have attended this webinar have gained something as well. I'm sure they have. It's been a pleasure getting to work. When we had a conversation earlier this week, I made this minor joke about, hey, I'm straightening my virtual tie because you guys are so impressive. It's actually true. That was a true statement, because I continue to be straightening that virtual tie. Thank you again. We deeply appreciate it. And I'm sure if there are any other questions that we receive, we'll reach out to you. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
One step.
Dreamforce. See you at Dreamforce. Take care.